So I went and bought myself a house without saying a word to my folks. Thought it was just gonna be my thing. Next thing I know, turns out they had this plan where my sister, her husband, and all 3 of their kids would just move in with me, for free. Hey Reddit, I'm Kate. I'm 32, from Texas, and honestly, I've spent most of my life stuck in the shadow of my older sister, Sarah. She's 3 years ahead of me, and I swear, she's always been the golden child. The kind of person who's book smart, good with people, and somehow always manages to talk her way out of trouble. Me? I've always been the one who followed the rules, took care of things. Which, in our family, basically meant being the one who did all the heavy lifting and got none of the recognition. Growing up, it was like Sarah lived in a different world. Her birthdays were these full-on events, bounce houses, ponies, the whole deal. Mine were usually pizza and cake from the grocery store, eaten in the dining room. Christmases? Sarah would unwrap a brand new Barbie dream house, while I'd get some off-brand version that didn't even have an elevator. When I'd ask why, Mom and Dad would just tell me I didn't need all that flashy stuff. Be grateful for what you've got, Kate, they'd say. And you know what? I was. I really tried to be. But what bugged me was that Sarah never had to be grateful for anything. Nobody ever expected that from her. The real split started when I got into college. I'd busted my butt in high school, taking AP classes, piling on extracurriculars, doing everything right to keep my GPA solid. I got accepted to a local school and figured I had a plan. I'd stay home to save money on housing. Sarah had gone to her dream college, and my parents paid for all of it. So, naturally, I thought they'd give me the same kind of support. Big mistake. When I brought up staying home, Mom gave me this look like I just told her I wanted to live on Mars. If you're gonna stay here, you'll have to pay your share, she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Apparently, Sarah deserved a free ride, but I needed to learn responsibility. I was stunned. I was barely 18, about to start college, and they were already telling me I had to cough up rent. That turned into $400 a month, rent and utilities. On top of that, I had to buy my own food. Now, $400 might not sound like much, but when you're a broke freshman pulling minimum wage at a bookstore, it feels like a mountain. I tried to talk to them. I pointed out how they paid for everything Sarah needed, how she never had to stress about money. Mom just shrugged. Sarah needed help, she said. You're different. You're independent. You'll manage. So I did. I took every shift I could at that bookstore. Some days I skipped meals just to stretch $1. I'd walk past the campus cafe every morning, eyeing the kids with their fancy coffees and pastries while I clutched my peanut butter sandwich and drank the free stuff from our break room. Textbooks? I never bought a new one. I either borrowed from the library or hunted down used copies. Every month, like clockwork, I handed my parents that $400, while Sarah lived it up at her out-of-state school in a dorm they paid for. I remember once she called to whine about how the AC in her dorm wasn't cold enough. I just stared at my car, no air conditioning, couldn't afford to fix it, and tried not to scream. My parents still sent her spending money every month. One time, I overheard Mom on the phone. We don't want her to struggle. College is hard enough. I stood there, in the kitchen, holding a pack of ramen I bought for $1, wondering why they never said that about me. And it wasn't just the money. They praised her like she was some kind of hero. She graduated with a 3.2 in communications, and they threw a massive party, catered food, a DJ, the whole works. When I graduated with a 3.9 in computer science, we had lasagna at home. Mom said, "We don't want to make a big deal." What stung most wasn't the lack of help, it was realizing I just didn't matter as much. Sarah was the star. I was just background. Even when I succeeded, it barely registered. Kate's smart. She doesn't need help, they'd say, like it was a compliment. But all it did was make me feel invisible. Being capable became a curse. After college, I moved out the first chance I got. Found a tiny apartment near my job and started piecing together my life. It wasn't glamorous, but at least it was mine. I worked hard, lived cheap, and slowly started saving. Meanwhile, Sarah married David. My parents love him, even though he's basically unemployed half the time. They've got 3 kids now, Chloe's 5, Liam's 4, and baby Ethan just turned 2. My parents are always swooping in to help. Their car breaks down? Boom, here's money for a new one. Sarah's stressed? No problem, free babysitting every weekend. I wish I could say it doesn't bug me anymore, but it does. No matter how hard I work, I'll never be their favorite. That's why I stopped telling them much about my life. Honestly, I don't think they'd care. So I kept it quiet, but I finally decided it was time to buy a house. I'd been stuck in that cramped little apartment for years, paying too much for too little. And after saving for what felt like forever, I hit a point where I thought, hey, I've earned this. I didn't tell my family, not because it was some huge secret, but because I knew how they'd react. With them, everything turns into a group project. If I said anything, they'd immediately make it about Sarah and how her kids could benefit somehow. So I figured I'd just keep my head down until the deal was done. Turns out, that was wishful thinking. I'm not even sure how it happened, but somehow a coworker, let's call her Lisa, let the cat out of the bag. Lisa's one of those people who can't help being in the know about everyone's business. She mentioned my house hunt to someone who, of course, just happened to live next to Sarah. And from there, the news spread like wildfire. Gotta love small-town Texas. A few days later, Mom calls me up. All cheerful. Kate, she says like she's sweet as pie. Why didn't you tell us you were looking for a house? I should have known then, I was in for it. Right now, I'm just casually browsing around, nothing serious at all. So Sarah and I were chatting earlier, and we came up with some pretty solid ideas for you. You're gonna need a place that's big enough to fit everyone comfortably. You know, at least 4 bedrooms for the kids, naturally. Wait, what kids? I don't have any kids. But she acted like that was the most normal thing in the world. She said, you'll want space for Sarah's family when they visit, and for us too. Oh, and she added it'd be great if it was near Sarah's place. Honestly, I don't know why I was surprised. Somehow, she had already turned the idea of my house into the perfect fix for their problems. I muttered something vague and got off the phone as quick as I could, hoping it was just a one-time thing. But oh man, it wasn't. From that day forward, my mom and Sarah started bombarding me with house listings. No joke, it felt like a part-time job for them. Every single day, I'd get at least a dozen links to these absurdly huge houses, 4 or 5 bedrooms, pools, 3-car garages, the whole 9 yards. They acted like I was shopping for some kind of reality show mansion. One day, Mom texted, "Did you see that one on Maple Street? It's huge, just perfect." Then Sarah sent me a link to a 6-bedroom house with a note saying, "This would be perfect for us. We'd finally have room to spread out." Us? I stared at that message for a solid minute, wondering how buying a house had suddenly become a group project. The worst part? They didn't even bother pretending it was about me anymore. Every house they suggested was clearly meant for Sarah's family. "This one has a finished basement. David could turn it into his man cave. The kids would love the pool here. Look, Kate, there's even a guest room for Mom and Dad when they come visit." It was downright exhausting. At first, I tried to gently remind them I was looking for something small, just for myself. But that only made things worse. That's when I decided to stop responding. I muted the group chat and ignored their messages, figuring they'd eventually get the hint and back off. Meanwhile, I kept searching for houses on my own. Evenings were spent scrolling Zillow, weekends checking out open houses. I didn't tell anyone where I was going and made sure to steer clear of anything near Sarah's neighborhood. The last thing I wanted was to bump into someone who might spill the beans to my mom. After weeks of searching, I finally found the one, a small, 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It had everything I wanted, a cozy porch, a bright kitchen, and a backyard big enough for a garden. It wasn't fancy, but the moment I stepped inside, it felt like home. I knew right then it was mine. I put in an offer, and after a few nerve-wracking days, it was accepted. I can't even describe how amazing that felt. For once, I was doing something just for me, without anyone else's say. Of course, I didn't tell my family. I figured I'd let them keep sending their helpful suggestions while I quietly moved forward on my own. But then out of nowhere, my mom called and said, "We're having dinner next weekend. You're coming, right?" I almost said no, but then I thought, you know what? Let's just get this over with. So, I'm going to this dinner, and honestly, I already know how it's gonna go. They'll probably have some kind of PowerPoint presentation ready for me. Here's the fun part. I'm planning to drop the bomb that I already bought a house. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I can already hear the dramatic gasps and complaints in my head. Thanks for sticking around. I'll update you after the dinner. Update 1. Hey again, Reddit. First off, thanks so much for all the comments and advice on my last post. I've read most of them, and honestly, it's been a mix of eye-opening and pretty funny. A lot of you said you couldn't believe how entitled my family sounded. And trust me, I'm right there with you. Others shared how they dealt with similar stuff, and honestly, it's good to know I'm not the only one stuck in this kind of situation. Anyway, I promised I'd update you after the dinner, so here it is. Buckle up, because it was something else. I showed up at my parents' place last Saturday at exactly 6 p.m., trying to brace myself for whatever nonsense was coming my way. The moment I walked in, chaos hit me. Sarah's kids running around screaming, David parked on the couch glued to the TV, and my mom bustling around the kitchen. She glanced over and said, "Oh good, you're on time for once. Great start, huh?" We sat down for dinner, and at first, it was just the usual small talk. Dad griped about gas prices, David complained about work, and Sarah whined about how hard it is managing 3 kids. "Ethan keeps waking up in the middle of the night," she said, shoveling mashed potatoes onto her plate. "We're so cramped, I swear I'm losing my mind." I knew exactly where this was headed, but I played along, nodding while focusing on my lasagna. Then my mom cleared her throat in that way she does when she's about to drop a big announcement. "Kate," she said, flashing that overly bright smile, "we've been talking and we think we found the perfect house for you." I almost choked on my water. Of course, they had a plan ready. "Oh?" I said, trying to sound neutral. "Yes," Sarah jumped in. "It's a beautiful place, just a few blocks from us. 5 bedrooms, a huge yard for the kids, even a guest suite." Before I could say anything, Mom cut in. "It's perfect for everyone. Plenty of space so the kids can finally have their own rooms. David could set up an office, too. And it's in a great neighborhood with good schools." I just stared at them, completely dumbfounded. They weren't even trying to pretend this was about me anymore. "So," Sarah said, grinning like it was already a done deal, "we can go see it tomorrow if you want." That's when I decided I'd had enough. "Actually," I said, setting my fork down, "I already bought a house." The room went completely silent. Even the kids stopped making noise. "What?" Mom said sharply. "I bought a house," I repeated. "It's a small 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It's perfect for me." For a moment, I thought maybe they'd be happy for me. Mom's face flushed a deep red, and Sarah just stood there, her mouth hanging open like she couldn't believe what she just heard. "A cottage?" Sarah said finally, her voice thick with shock. "How are we supposed to fit in a cottage?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're not." "Because it's my house. I bought it for me." Before Sarah could say anything, Mom jumped in, clearly upset. "Kate, how could you decide something this big without even talking to us? We've been putting in all this effort trying to find the perfect home for you." "No," I said, trying to stay calm. "You've really been trying to find the perfect place for Sarah and her whole family. I didn't need their help. I knew exactly what I wanted, so I went and bought it." Sarah's voice got higher, like she was about to cry. "But Kate, we really need this. It's so hard in our tiny apartment. Chloe and Liam have to share a room, and Ethan's crib is in our bedroom. It's just not fair to the kids." I took a deep breath and tried not to lose it. "That's not my problem, Sarah. I worked hard to get here, and I'm not giving up my dream house just to fix your situation." That's when Dad slammed his hand down on the table and shouted, "You're being selfish, Kate. Family is supposed to support each other." I stood up, my heart racing. "I'm not selfish. I'm finally standing up for myself, and if that makes me the villain to you, then so be it." The room erupted into chaos. Sarah was crying, Mom was yelling about how she raised me right, and Dad was ranting about his disappointment. David just sat there, shoving food in his mouth like nothing was wrong. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Mom followed, yelling, "You can't just walk away from your family." I turned around and said, "Watch me." Then I got in my car and drove home, shaking with a mix of anger and relief. For once, I'd stood my ground. Now I'm just waiting for the fallout. So that's where things are at. I'll keep you posted on what happens next. Thanks again for all the support. It means more than you know. Update 2. Hey Reddit, thanks so much for all the support after my last update. I honestly wasn't expecting so much encouragement, and it's helped me keep my head straight. A lot of you were right, I should have seen this coming. After that dinner, things got way worse. Here's what happened. That same night, Sarah sent me a photo of her kids squeezed onto their couch, surrounded by toys, with the caption, "Look how cramped we are. Is this fair to Chloe and Liam?" I didn't reply. What could I say? That her messy apartment was somehow my fault? That buying my own house magically made her kids share a room? I put my phone on silent and went to bed, hoping she'd drop it. She didn't. The next morning, I woke up to 5 missed calls from Mom and a flood of texts from Sarah. One read, "You always think about yourself. I thought family mattered to you." Another said, "Mom was so upset she couldn't sleep last night." And then the real kicker. "You've changed, Kate. This isn't the sister I grew up with." Right, because the sister she knew was too ignored to stand up for herself. I ignored it and focused on work, but the messages kept coming. Every few hours, Mom would add her own guilt trips. "You're so selfish, Kate. We're all disappointed in you. Do you realize what this is doing to Sarah's kids? You need to rethink this. It's not too late to sell and get something better for everyone." I muted both of them. But then the voicemails started. Same guilt stuff, but hearing their voices made it worse. Mom sounded really angry. Sarah sounded close to tears. And Dad called me one day and yelled at me for 5 minutes straight about how I was breaking the family apart. It didn't stop there. A few days later, my aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years, called me out of nowhere. "I heard about what's going on with Sarah," she said. "Can't you find it in your heart to help? Family comes first, Kate." I laughed. This was the same aunt who barely noticed I existed growing up. Now she wanted to preach about family? I told her I wasn't discussing it and hung up. Then came the Facebook posts. Sarah shared a picture of her kids all squeezed together on their bunk bed with the caption, "All they want is a little space to grow. But I guess some people don't think family is worth helping anymore." Her friends' comments were full of sympathy, none of them knowing the full story. Stuff like, "You're such a great mom. Whoever's letting you down doesn't deserve you. How could anyone leave you guys like this?" I wanted to scream. She was making me out to be the bad guy, and I couldn't defend myself without seeming petty. So I stayed quiet and kept scrolling. Then Mom posted something on her page, a picture of my house. How she got it, I don't know. With the caption, "It's sad when someone forgets where they came from. Family sacrifices so much, and this is how they repay you." I blocked both of them immediately, but not before a coworker messaged me asking what was going on. Apparently Lisa, yes, that Lisa, had seen the post and was gossiping at work. Now half the office thought I'd abandoned my family to live alone in some mansion. For the record, my house is just a small cottage, not exactly a palace. The stress was crushing. Every time my phone buzzed, my anxiety spiked. I stopped checking social media and avoided my messages. Even at work, I couldn't focus, always waiting for the next drama. Things hit a new low when Sarah showed up at my apartment one evening, totally unannounced. I opened the door and there she was, Ethan on her hip, the other 2 kids trailing behind her. She looked wiped out. The kids were all crying or whining about something. "Kate," she said, voice breaking, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms and stood in the doorway, blocking them from coming inside. "What do you want, Sarah?" I asked, my voice steady but tired. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pleaded. "Please, we have nowhere else to turn. The landlord's raised our rent again, and there's no way we can cover it. Just let us crash with you for a bit. The kids need some kind of stability." Hearing that, my chest tightened, but I held my ground. "Sarah, I'm sorry you're struggling, but my place isn't an option. It's too small, and honestly, this isn't my responsibility to fix." She looked at me like I'd just kicked her puppy. "So that's it? You're just going to let us fall apart?" she said, voice trembling. "I'm not letting anyone suffer. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not about to let guilt push me into giving it all away." She muttered something under her breath, spun around, and stormed off with her kids trailing behind. I closed the door and leaned back against it, caught between guilt and relief. The next morning, my mom called, accusing me of being heartless for turning Sarah away. She called me cold and ungrateful and warned I'd regret it one day. I didn't even answer, just hung up. Even now, while writing this, their texts keep flooding my phone. Mom's sending long messages loaded with guilt, and Sarah's bombarding me with pictures of the kids. Just moments ago, I got a voicemail from Dad that started with, "I hope you're happy." But I didn't bother listening to the rest. I'm at my limit. First thing tomorrow, I'm changing my number and only sharing it with close friends and work. It's clear they won't stop until I cut them off completely. Later, I'll tighten up my social media privacy settings and block anyone stirring up trouble, but that can wait. One step at a time. I'll update you once I've handled it all. Thanks again for all your comments and support. It's helping me get through this mess. Update 3. Hey Reddit, I'm back with another update. I've been reading your comments, and wow, y'all did not hold back. Many of you were right to be mad at me for not blocking my family sooner. After I changed my number, I went all in, blocked them on Facebook, Instagram, even random relatives who might have tried to play middleman. Cutting them off felt amazing. But of course, the peace didn't last long. Last weekend, my mom showed up at my house unannounced. I was outside in the backyard, trying to figure out how to plant lavender. Google makes it look easy, but I've already killed 3 plants. Then I heard a knock at the front door. At first, I thought it was the neighbor or maybe a delivery. But when I opened it, there she was, my mom, standing on the porch holding a pie, wearing the fakest smile I've ever seen. "Hi, Kate," she said, like she was just dropping by for a friendly visit, not after weeks of me ghosting her. Hi," I replied, totally caught off guard. I hesitated, debating whether to let her in, but she practically shoved the pie into my hands and said, "I thought I'd stop by to see how you're doing. Brought your favorite, apple." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. "My favorite's cherry, but whatever, Mom." Against my better judgment, I let her in. Didn't want a scene. She set the pie on the counter and looked around like she was taking inventory. "This is lovely, Kate," she said, running her hand along the back of a chair. "You've done a great job." I mumbled a quick thanks, waiting for her to get to the point. She sat down at the kitchen table and sighed theatrically. "I wanted to apologize," she began. "Things got heated, and I realize now we were wrong to push you like that. You've worked hard for this house, and I should have respected your choices." I stared at her, trying to figure out if she was genuine. It sounded nice, but something about her tone felt off. Then she went on about how proud she was of me, blaming the stress of Sarah's situation for everyone acting out. But she said with a sad, almost pleading look, "That's no excuse." For a moment, I felt myself soften. Maybe she really was trying to make amends. But then she dropped. "I was thinking maybe we could have a fresh start. I'd love to come over again sometime, maybe bring Sarah and the kids. It'd be nice for everyone to see your new place." And there it was. I kept my cool and said carefully, "I don't think that's a good idea right now. Things are still tense, and I'm not ready." She nodded but didn't seem pleased. "Of course, I understand," she said, but her smile was tight, and her eyes kept darting around the room, like she was sizing everything up. After a few more minutes of small talk, she stood and said, "Well, I should get going. Thanks for letting me stop by, I really mean it, Kate. I just want us to be a family again." I nodded but didn't reply. After she left, I locked the door and stood there for a while, staring at the pie on the counter. Something about the whole visit felt off. For days, I'd been replaying that conversation in my head. Was she sincere, or just trying to manipulate me again? The timing was too convenient. After weeks of harassment, the moment I cut them off, she suddenly shows up with a pie and an apology? It felt strange how quickly she skimmed over everything, the texts, the voicemails, the fact I'd blocked her. Like she was pretending none of it ever happened. And the whole bringing Sarah and the kids idea? That didn't feel like a casual suggestion. It seemed calculated, testing how much I'd tolerate. I haven't reached out since, and she hasn't contacted me again either. But I can't shake the feeling this isn't over. Knowing how my family is, I just have this feeling something else is brewing, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. What do you think, Reddit? Was my mom actually sincere this time, or is there some kind of hidden agenda behind her sudden apology and pie? Part of me wants to believe she's trying to make things right, but the other part is screaming that trusting her again would be a huge mistake. I could really use some outside perspective on this. Update 4. Hey Reddit, I'm back, and honestly, I hope this is the last update because things have gone from annoying to downright crazy. I don't even know where to start, but I'm officially done giving my family the benefit of the doubt. Remember when my mom dropped by with that apology and a pie? Well, turns out my gut was spot on. Something about that visit just didn't sit right. She seemed way too interested in every little detail of my house, the locks on the doors, how the rooms were laid out. At first, I thought she was just being nosy, but now I realize it was part of some bigger plan. A few days passed, and I was busy at work, holed up in my new home office, trying to meet deadlines and not thinking much about family drama. Things were quiet, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they were finally backing off. Then came Saturday. I ran some errands in the morning, grocery shopping, a quick stop at Target, and picking up a package from the post office. I got back around noon, bags in hand, ready to put everything away and relax for the weekend. But as I pulled into my driveway, something caught my eye. Sarah's SUV was parked right in front of my house. My heart dropped. I walked up to the door, fumbling with my keys, and that's when I heard voices inside. At first, I thought maybe I'd left the window open or my TV was still on, but stepping inside hit me like a punch. Sarah, David, and the kids were in my house. Complete chaos. Chloe and Liam were sprawled on my couch, surrounded by snacks and toys that weren't even theirs. Ethan was toddling around chewing on one of my throw pillows like it was a chew toy. David was in the kitchen raiding my fridge, and Sarah? She was in the sunroom, rearranging my furniture like she was hosting a home makeover show. What the hell is going on? I blurted out, voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Sarah looked up like I was interrupting her day. Oh, hey Kate. We figured it'd be easier to just move in while you were out. I just stared at her, trying to process what she'd said. Move in? Are you serious? She rolled her eyes. Mom gave us the key. Said it'd be fine. I felt like I was about to lose it. Mom gave you what key? She gestured toward the kitchen counter where I'd left the spare key during Mom's visit. The spare. We really needed the space, and your house is perfect. Could have been bigger if you'd listened to us, but it'll do. David can finally have an office. Get out, I said, voice dangerously calm. David, leaning against my fridge with a sandwich in hand, said, Kate, don't be like that. You're single, you don't need all this space. This house makes way more sense for us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were treating my house like just another one of my parents' handouts for Sarah. Get out of my house, I repeated louder this time. Sarah scoffed. We're family, Kate. Stop being so dramatic. We've already started settling in, and the kids love it here. It's not like you're using all this space anyway. I was so angry I could barely think straight. Instead of arguing, I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. Seriously? Sarah said, voice dripping with disbelief. You're calling the cops on your own family? David said. Watch me, I said, holding the phone up so they could see. When the dispatcher answered, I calmly explained the situation, that my sister and her family had broken into my home and refused to leave. Sarah and David tried arguing with me while I was on the phone, but I ignored them. By the time the cops arrived, I was shaking with adrenaline, but I was determined not to let them get away with this. The officers were professional but firm. They asked Sarah and David why they were there, and their story was as ridiculous as you'd expect. We're family, Sarah said like that was some kind of legal excuse. David rambled on about how I had plenty of space and how it was the right thing to do. The officers weren't buying it. They told Sarah and David they were trespassing and needed to leave immediately. Sarah started crying, saying she didn't realize it was a big deal, and David muttered that I was being selfish. I stayed silent, letting the cops handle it. Honestly, watching them pack up their stuff, including the snacks they'd raided from my pantry, and shuffle out the door felt oddly satisfying. After they left, one of the officers pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to press charges. I thought about it for a moment, but honestly, I just wanted them gone. I told the officer I wouldn't press charges as long as they stayed away from my property. He nodded and said they'd file a report in case anything else happened. Once they were gone, I locked the door and stood there for a while, just absorbing everything. My house felt different, almost violated. The fact that they just let themselves in without asking or caring how I felt made my skin crawl. I've already called a locksmith to change all the locks, and I'm seriously thinking about installing a security system too. I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding or desperation. This was entitlement, pure and simple. I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that my own sister thought this was okay. And the fact that my mom gave them the key? I don't even have words for that yet. I called my lawyer this morning, explained the whole situation, and had a formal cease and desist letter drafted and sent to my mom, Sarah, and David. The letter outlined everything they'd done and made it clear that if they continued to harass me, I wouldn't hesitate to take legal action. Anyway, that's where things stand for now. I'm still furious, but I'm also kind of numb. Part of me is wondering if this is really over or if they're going to try something else. Thanks again to everyone who's followed along and supported me through this wild ride. Your advice, validation, and even the tough love have meant more to me than I can say. Take care, Reddit.